Hello and welcome to this episode of our podcast. I'm Craig, your host for this episode, and today I was joined by Tromsø and Canada goalkeeper Simon Thomas. Apologies to any Norwegian speakers for that horrific pronunciation. Simon and I discussed his unique career so far, playing all across the globe. We also discuss what success for Canada looks like at World Cup 2026 and who might lead them there. So, join me as we go off the beaten pitch. How are you doing?
I'm good, thanks. I'm good.
Good. Yeah?
Hi.
Glad to hear it.
Nice to hear from you.
Yeah. Obviously, heard a lot about you, but it's nice to actually speak to you and actually have a proper conversation. So
Absolutely.
that's great. Thanks before we start as well. Thanks so much for doing this. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. My pleasure. My pleasure.
Yeah, good. Yeah, just to reiterate as well. This is just for university like module. So I've not got any plans of it going out anywhere or anything like that.
No worries.
But yeah, just to remind you of that. But
Yeah, that's awesome.
yeah, unless there's anything else, then I'm happy to get on with it and start asking some questions if you are.
Yeah, let's go for it.
Great. Okay. So you've got the sheet, haven't you? Or
yeah, I do. I'm just pulling it up here on my.
Okay. Well, I've got it as well. So yeah, just whatever you're happiest with. But so you just returned from a pre-season camp in Spain. You said so. How was that? Was it enjoyable? I'd like to hear a bit more about what goes on these camps away.
Yeah, it was really enjoyable. So this time of year, and obviously earlier in the year, we most of Europe and Scandinavia, for that matter, they all go down to Marbella in that region of Spain. Usually that, or there's some other places that you would go as well, but most of the teams that have had winter breaks will go down there for a week or two to play matches, get some warm weather before they start their league back up again. So we were down there as well, and usually, like as it gets a bit later in the year, the Norwegian football teams are the only ones kind of left there. Maybe you might have some Swedish or teams as well, but usually because they have their cup that starts earlier than our season, they're usually done by now. And same with the Danish teams because they're back into season. So it was really good. We had 2 good matches with some good weather and a lot of good work on the grass, because I think that's at least right now where we are in Norway, being so far north, it's hard to actually, some days though the conditions can be quite poor. So, and it doesn't lend itself to be doing a bit extra or doing a little bit more work on the pitch.
Yeah, I bet it's quite cold and miserable some days.
Yeah,
which leads me on to my next question is from your experience with these camps away, how much of it is psychological and how much of it is physical? Because I imagine it's a mixture of both, because I imagine it can be quite hard on the body going through the cold weather and hard pitches, but then also it could be sort of just resetting and refocusing.
Absolutely. I think because you spend so much time with the guys, I think you build there's a bit of a camaraderie and like a bond built up with the rest of the boys, and you're either playing cards or doing something together. So it's nice to have that time together in the season to kind of learn about each other a bit more than what you would normally in your kind of day-to-day life. I think as for the training, I think what we do and the way the club approaches it, because we are so tactics orientated and we do so much tactical work throughout the week, even from the start of preseason, our weeks don't necessarily change. I think it's been all planned out and it's very methodical the way it's done. So it's not, we don't go down there and think, okay, you know what, we have 2 weeks down here, we're just going to go for it as hard as we can, and then we get some days off and then we come back and we go again. It's more like, you know what, we have a plan, we work on that, we build on that. So if there is a physical load to it, obviously, but it's maybe not as much as what you would think, or maybe at some other clubs what they might have, because they are trying to get down there and then they'll go and push, maybe double sessions during on the weeks. So.
Mm-hmm. Oh, cool. So that makes sense. That's really, really interesting. Nice bit of insight. Have you got any specific goals for like the upcoming season, or shorter term, longer term, both sort of personally or with the team?
You know what? I think we need to. We're kind of building on the culture that we had last year. I think that's a lot of what we've done and what our success was last year. Is that we took it game by game and we kind of built a culture of, it's kind of us versus them. And it worked well for us. But I think, we've had success with it. But I think and we have sold some players now, and we've had a lot of players that have been gotten a lot of recognition. But this is the time where, you need to go back to work. You need to start all over again. So that's what we're working on. I don't think we're going to set maybe the coaching staff has set, some kind of targets for us, but I think for us as a player group, we're just kind of setting our goals as a team, as a collective group of what we kind of hold ourselves to, our standards, and then we go from there. And then of course we have Europa Conference League qualification in the summer. So I think in every competition we go into, we want to win games.
Mm-hmm. Cool. That's really interesting how you sort of focusing on, rather than specific sort of goals as in like targets, it's more of a building a culture and that sort of thing, which is really interesting.
Absolutely.
With football clubs, I feel like they can be quite a melting pot of all different cultures, players from all over the world. How do you find assimilating into new cultures when playing abroad and meshing with a big group of players from all over the place?
Yeah, I think it's really important to put yourself out there and to be vulnerable. I think that's I think it's quite easy to be in your own kind of bubble and do your own thing and try to establish your habits. And I think you do need to do that to kind of ground yourself. But I think in the long run, you do need to actually be vulnerable and, try to make new friends and try to understand people and the best you can, because that's the only way you can kind of go forward and, be accepted in the group. And I think that's, I think also when we talk about building culture, it's like, if I had no relationship with any of these guys, or I've never put myself out there and tried to make friends with any of them, it would not go over so well. So I think it is very key.
Yeah. Okay. So like with the culture there, sort of a fun side, a lot of football clubs, there's initiation singing songs. Do you have like a go-to song when you arrive at a club or anything like that?
I do. Yeah, it goes back to, I actually haven't done it in years because Norwegian clubs is not that common. There's a few other things, but it's not it depends from club to club. Mm-hmm. But when I was in England and I did do, and other clubs, I did do a song, and it was Summer '69 by Bryan Adams. And it kind of stems from when I was at Huddersfield, and the boys, I had no idea we actually needed to do an initiation song, and they just kind of sprung it on me one day as we were going down to, we had an away game. It was one of the first trips I was on, and they was like, "Oh yeah, well, you got your song ready for you," and I had no idea what they're talking about. So I figured I just had to pick a Canadian song. So Bryan Adams being from the similar part of Canada, I was like, okay, that's what I'm going to go for. And it was terrible. I bombed so bad. I had napkins flying at me and booze, and so it wasn't a good experience, but that's the way it is.
It has to be done. I'm sure they respected you for getting up there and giving it a go. So
absolutely. Absolutely.
So, are there many similarities between Norway and Canada? Like from an outside perspective, it seems like there might be some, with winter sports. From someone who's visited neither country, then there might be some similarities, but I imagine there's also quite a lot of things that are very different. So, from your experience, are there any similarities or?
Yeah, I think at least I feel like the nature and the kind of landscape is quite similar in a lot of ways. I don't feel too out of place in that regards. So I'm not. It's not like I'm missing mountains or the ocean or anything like that. I think the cultures do differ in a way. I think that I probably our value sets between Canada and Norway is quite similar, but I think the Norwegians are a lot more reserved, and they like to keep to themselves. So I think if you're, I think when I first came over, I was a bit taken aback because I'd just come from England at the time, and I went out for a walk, just in the area that I was, and I was saying hello and good morning to the people I was passing, and they looked at me like I was crazy. Because that's just not a thing. They're just very much like, okay, unless you know somebody, like you're not talking to them, like so. It was a bit of a little bit of a had to learn a little bit about that. But they are just a little bit reserved. But once you get to know them, they are such warm people and they open up.
Did you ever struggle with any homesickness? I imagine it's quite crazy being a young man going to a complete different continent away from family and friends that you've grown up with. So did you ever struggle with homesickness even in
Yeah,
England or Norway?
yeah. I think I did with. I think I did when I first went away to England. I think that's. I think it was my first. I've been living away from home since I was 18. Or 17, 18. And then I was over in England for my 21st birthday and for a year and a bit after that. But it was, I think for me at that point, because that was the first kind of big move away, there was a lot of change. I think that one I was definitely a bit homesick for in periods. And I think it was, I think obviously just finding, a group of friends and connecting at the time, because it wasn't as easy as it is now with all the kind of FaceTime and technology we have. It wasn't quite what it was. I did find it a bit hard for that period. But as my second time in England and then over in Norway, it was a bit different because I kind of knew what to expect, and I had grown up and matured a little bit more, so it was a little bit different then. But yeah, I did struggle with it a little bit.
I'm glad to hear that it didn't last too long and you managed it fine. So I'm curious, like you often hear players spend a lot of time when they're growing up and developing in the game. They play completely different positions to what they end up playing. Have you always been a goalkeeper? Is it something that you've always aspired to be, or were you ever interested in playing any other positions?
When I first started out, I was playing kind of all over. I was kind of a striker or a winger, but it was kind of your cliche story, but it was just when one of the goalkeepers went down injured, and it was my turn to go in net, and I ended up loving it and making lots of saves, and I thought, that's what I want to do. So kind of since then, I have played in goal for ages. So yeah, it happened fairly quick in my career, I think.
So who were some of your idols growing up and throughout your early career? Is there any goalkeepers that come straight to mind where you think, that is exactly who, or was there a tournament or a performance that helped you, want to follow in their footsteps or aspire to be similar to them?
Yeah, so I think that was probably I say probably Oliver Kahn in the 2002 World Cup. He was amazing. He was a beast. So that is probably definitely my first one. And then I've been lucky enough to, or there's a couple others after that. I think Van der Sar was fantastic, and I think Jens Lehmann too was. I looked up to him a fair bit. Yeah, I think those are probably the main ones. Those aren't bad ones, to be fair.
No, pretty good list, I'd say.
Absolutely.
So I think goalkeeper is quite a unique position in football where only one can play each game. So how do you manage that within position rivalry to assure success throughout the team?
I think there's an understanding within goalkeepers is that it's obviously there is a rivalry, and there is depends on obviously the person, because there are some people that there is tension between for whatever reason. But I think for the most part, I've had some pretty good relationships with the other goalkeepers, and it's like I think there's a genuine understanding that whoever is playing, that's the manager's choice, and it's kind of nothing against the next guy, and that's the way it is, and we're kind of all working towards the same goal. But I think it is hard. I think it's like obviously you do have to remind yourself that it is, you're a team in the end, even though that one person is going to play, and it feels quite individual.
What would you say your proudest achievement of your career so far is?
I think it would be my first cap for the national team was amazing. I think it went by in a flash. It was I came on as a halftime sub for Canada against Denmark, and I think that was it was quite amazing. But I think the proudest moment was my first start for the national team against the US. We drew 0-0 away in the US, and I think that was just at that point, just to have that whole experience of walking out on the pitch and just to be there in the moment. It was amazing, and that is definitely my proudest moment.
That's incredible. Like to get a clean sheet on your debut as well against the biggest rivals in the US. That's just incredible. So congratulations on that. Do you remember how you found out you were being called up? Did the manager call you? Do you remember where you were? What was going through your head at the time?
Yeah, so I got a call from the goalkeeper coach saying that they were going to call me up, but it was completely unexpected at the time. I had come back from England at the time, and I was just about to sign for the Whitecaps in MLS, but it was very much like we're out of the blue kind of moment, and I wasn't even thinking about it. And even going to the camp, my thought process was, just go in there and learn as much as you can, and experience as much as you can with it, and grow as a player. I wasn't even really thinking about playing games, and in the first one, it's going at halftime against Denmark, and then start against the US. It was it was a pretty wild kind of 2 weeks period for that.
I bet. Speaking of the national team, we've got the World Cup coming up in the next couple of years, being hosted by Canada. What do you think Canada's prospects are for that World Cup? Do you think they've got a good chance to go far?
I think they do. I genuinely think they do. I think that the players, the player group that we have now, another couple of years older at playing a lot more games, I think there's potential. I think there's we don't have a manager at the moment, but I think once they establish a full-time manager, and I think he really he sets in place his kind of philosophy, I think there's possibilities. I don't know. I have no idea how far that is, but I think that you can. What we saw in the last qualifying cycle, the belief and people getting behind the team, I think that there is potential for it to explode.
I'll put you on the spot a little bit now. So what would you say a successful World Cup would be for Canada? Is it to get out of the group? Is it to get to the semis? What would you say would be a successful tournament?
I'd say getting out of the group. I think
Yeah.
that's probably. I think after the games in Qatar, I think that there was potential. I think they played really well against Belgium and in the other games, and you can see that the couple teams in the group, 2 teams in the group, went on to go quite deep in the tournament. I think that they weren't out of place there. So I think now is taking that and just really going for it. I think if you get an early result in the group stage, I think anything can happen then. So I think getting out of the group.
So are there any young Canadian talents that you tip for a big or breakout tournament at the World Cup 26?
I think it's hard to say. I think the old guard, or not the old guard, but the be more mature now. I think Alfonso Davies. I think he'll be more settled in his role, whether that be at kind of Bayern Munich or rumors are now Real Madrid. I think he has potential to do that. But I also like the way Kyle Larin at Mallorca has been playing lately, and I think Jonathan David. I think he's been, as soon as I saw him coming with a national team, you could just see how cool and calm he was finishing, and he was fantastic. So I have big belief in
him. So who would you say is the best player you've either played with or against? This would be either with a national team or at club level.
Yeah, I think probably against. I played a friendly against Morocco against Hakim Ziyech. He was good. He was very good. Him and Amrabat ran the midfield. They were so good. They were honestly so good. Seeing a couple more players when they were in there. Yeah, but Fonzie is very good. I think just he's an athlete, just like raw speed. I've never seen somebody so fast in real life. I think his first 3 steps are so rapid, and he runs past like grown men and makes them look like kids. So just athletic wise, probably one of the top ones too.
Yeah, I wonder, was he, do you have any idea if he was always so physical as a player? Because Bayern Munich have got a reputation of building up their players' physicality quite a lot. You see a lot of these transformation photos. So I was wondering, do you think he always had that physicality, or was that something that Bayern has nurtured?
He always had the speed. I mean, he's probably gone faster now, being obviously mature, because I think when I first saw him, I roomed with him one camp on the national team when he was, I think, 18, and he was always just a beast, but from an early age. But I do think that just Germany in general, you go there and they have such a culture around physical work and the sport or strength and conditioning, and I think Bayern Munich are at that next level. So I am 100% sure that they've made him better, bigger, and stronger.
So Speaking of bigger and stronger, I was having a little bit of a look through, and there was an overlap for 2 years in the league where you were had the potential of coming up against a young Erling Haaland.
Yeah.
Did you ever manage to share a picture of him, or is that just
Um,
not work out?
you know what? I was trying to think back. I don't know if I did. I've played against his boyhood club when I first came. I played against Molde at that time, but I don't know if I ever actually saw him come on. And maybe if he did, it might have been a preseason friendly, but I can't remember. But yeah, we were in Norway this evening, and he is a fantastic player. And obviously, you could see it then that he had the ability, and that he was going to go and do things.
Yeah, well, I suppose if you have the accolade that you kept a clean sheet about Erling Haaland, you definitely know about it. So
Yeah, I probably would. Yeah,
maybe. So that's all the questions I've got for you. So
that's great.
I'd like to thank you again for your time. I really appreciate it, and all the best for the rest of the season.
Perfect. Thank you. That was really fun.